Okay, so to let you know a little bit about me, I am a customer success consultant with Turnitin, and my previous world was K-12 mathematics. So I was a math teacher for about 20 years.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I come from when I do this. Um, I've got the outline for today's training on the screen. So what we're going to do is go through creating and managing a Turnitin assignment in Canvas.
Okay.
And what I also want to do is take you out to understand Feedback Studio, which is the software that you can use to grade papers and also to interpret what we're going to call the similarity report or the originality report. And
Okay.
that's the most people purchase Turnitin for plagiarism detection, so that's how you
Yes.
manage that report. And then I have some documents that I gave to Jared, and he's posted those, so you can find out from him where exactly you can find those. So all of the things I'm going to say, I've pretty much documented in these documents, which are basically my training notes, and then I supply those to you guys, so you don't have to take notes. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm in your instance of Canvas, and what I'm going to do is create an assignment. So although you can go through modules to create an assignment, I'm just going to go to the Assignments tab and create a module, create an assignment through this tab. So you can either create the assignment by clicking on the plus sign here or plus assignment up in the top. I usually use this one. It brings up a pop-up. With Turnitin currently, you're creating assignments by using an external tool. It's this fourth choice. In the future, you will be able to create assignments through this option. So we're going to be adding next spring another option of how you can use Turnitin. So in the spring sometime, Jared and I will put out some more information on that about the new features that are coming. Currently, the only way to use Turnitin is with the external tool. And I'm just going to create just an argument essay, which is the type of essay I usually use for these trainings. Give it a due date. And assign it a certain number of points. And by using the pop-up, if I click more options here, it takes me to the Canvas assignment settings page, where I can then fill in a description, and the point values pull in from the pop-up. You can assign assignment groups, how you're going to display the points. These are all Canvas settings. And because I was in that pop-up, I chose external tool, so it pulled it in. If not, it would have pulled it in as probably an online submission. Turnitin's an external tool, so you click Find, and you find the tool. Should be toward the bottom because it's a T. Click on it and click Select. It loads the Turnitin URL. This option right here, load this tool in a new tab. If you check that, then when you go to the assignment inbox of where you're going to find the students, after students start submitting, it's going to be where the student submissions are listed. Checking this will cause that assignment inbox to load in a new browser window. Some professors like this option because they say it expands the window and it makes it easier to read. Other people don't like this option because it's more clicks that you have to do to manage it. So I'm not going to do this, but you might want to try it sometime just to see if you like it. Next, you'll select the dates. This is going to be due on October 27th. I had already selected that. This date is going to be the due date that Turnitin uses. Available from is all about visibility to the students. I'm going to make this assignment visible to the students today. And available until is when do I want this assignment to not be visible to students. This date field right here does not control the due date. It only controls visibility. But if your professors, if your instructors decide that they want to use Turnitin to deliver feedback, then whatever date they populate here is going to affect the student's ability to access that feedback. So I usually tell my instructors either not to populate this date field at all or populate it at the end of the term, because this is how long the students are going to be able to access the assignment, unless they have a specific reason for why they want to turn the visibility off for the students. Okay, so look back over the Canvas assignment settings and see if you have any questions for me about those.
Okay, I do have a question.
Okay.
You said to going back up to the assignment availability until. You
So
said
this day right
we
here.
need yes, you said we need to make that date be the end of the term.
Or
So
you
there's
cannot put anything in at all. Like I
okay,
could leave it blank. That's
okay.
another option like that.
So that way students have access to the feedback for the entire course.
Exactly. But
Okay.
unless
Eh,
the instructor has a reason for wanting to limit the feedback.
Yeah,
And if they
yeah.
do, then they would populate that field with the date.
Okay.
Okay.
Now go back up.
Okay. Have,
Okay, Gerald said we typically leave the okay. Uh, So I have to enter in where it says submission type. I have to complete that box.
that's correct. Because
That's
if
what
you
makes it to
don't,
turnitin.com.
yeah. See, if you
Okay.
leave it as online, then this
Yeah.
is the Canvas submission. To turn it into a Turnitin submission, I have to
Okay.
populate it as external tool.
Oh, okay. Great.
Now, that will, next spring, we're adding a functionality where you will be able to leave it as online and then
Mm-hmm.
be able to add Turnitin as an option, which is going to really be, it's a very exciting addition we're all looking forward to. And it's going to happen sometime in the January to March timeframe. So Jared and I are going to get together, and when that rolls out, we'll figure out a way to roll that out to y'all.
Okay. Great.
You can see how it works. Anything else?
No, no.
Okay.
Most of the assignments, especially for the online classes, are already created and populated.
Mm-hmm.
So if we wanted to, for example, I teach a business course,
Okay.
and the assignments are already set up. I would just need to go, say they have a research paper, and the guidelines and parameters are already set. I would just need to go to that one box and click on external tool to add in the Turnitin feature.
Yes. But
Okay.
keep in mind that when you change to an external tool, if you've used group assignments or the peer review right here,
Okay.
or if you're using a Canvas rubric, it does change the functionality a little bit.
Yeah, because most of the courses have rubrics.
Are you using the
For
Canvas
Canvas.
rubrics?
Yes.
Okay, so if you do that, then what's going to happen is the instructor can still see the rubric and still grade with it, but the students can't see the rubric. So you
Oh.
have to be very careful taking an assignment and switching it to an external tool. Now, the good news for you is next
Hmm.
spring, when that new plagiarism framework rolls out, you will be able to turn Turnitin on without changing that to an external tool. And
Oh.
what that's going to mean is that you can still use your Canvas rubrics, you can use your group assignments and your peer reviews. So they're building
Okay.
that right now.
Because, and the reason why I asked is because, wow, I didn't know it. So
Mhm.
there's no way to utilize the rubrics if we use Turnitin.com.
You can still use the rubrics for Canvas. It's just that the students can't see them. Like if I were to
Yeah.
put in online here and then save it,
Yeah. Yes.
which I don't know. Let me go ahead and publish it to you. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let's do a file upload. And then I'm going to save that because this is the normal way that you're doing the assignments.
Yes.
Then I go to, and see, I don't do this very much, so we have to think about it. So then I go back to the assignment. Did it not create it?
It
Uh-oh.
did. It looks
I thought
as
I
if
did
it
a
did.
third one. No, this is not the one. So
Oh, okay.
I did something wrong here. Okay, so let's do this again. Okay, so we have our points. We're doing online with a file upload because we want a rubric, and we've got our dates. So we're going to make it due here, make it available from today, and we're going to save and publish it. Now, when I create the Canvas assignment, this is the page that it brings me to next, right, where I can add the
Yes.
rubric. And I don't
Yes.
know if I have a rubric in here. So maybe I can just create it. Okay, so now I've added the rubric.
Okay.
Then I can go back to the assignment and I can edit it. And I may be going the long way to do this. Forgive me if I am. But when I go back into the editing, I can then change that to an external tool and add Turnitin. The only problem with doing this is that the teacher will have access to the rubric, but the students, and I've never tested it from the student side, so this is just what my understanding is. So now I've got a Turnitin assignment, and if I go to SpeedGrader,
yes,
the rubric's here. And so the teacher has access and they can grade it, but my understanding is the students do not. So it's just a sacrifice you're making right now. The good news is that Turnitin is about to change that and is about to make it so that you don't have to do all of that. You can just leave this as online and you can use your Canvas rubrics. So if you're wanting to use rubrics, Canvas rubrics, I would wait a few months, I guess is what I'm telling you.
Okay.
Okay. So questions about that?
No, no, that's good information.
Yeah, so I do like to share that when I have time. That you're lucky. See, this is our one-on-one. So, so you asked the question. I don't normally go into that much detail, but it's that people want to know that. So that's good that, to ask that one. How do I?
So will you send out a announcement saying that the Turnitin process has been adapted for the rubrics next year?
It'll go out to Jared and sometime around the January to March timeframe. It's in testing right now. And then once that announcement goes out, then I'll talk with Jared about seeing if we can't do a webinar or something on that. So
great.
Good. Anything else?
No, okay. This is good.
So for right now, I wouldn't try the Canvas rubrics because it's a little glitchy. I would just wait if I were.
Okay.
Okay, so when you create an external tool assignment, it gives you this inbox. So this is a new inbox. This is not, obviously, it's not the Canvas inbox. Now, up here are these edit assignment settings in the upper right-hand corner. Those are your Canvas assignment settings. Your Turnitin assignment settings are found on this tab. So if you look at them, Turnitin's going to pull over the assignment title, the max grade, the start date, and the due date. So those are pulled in. The only way to alter those is to go back to the Canvas assignment settings, alter them there, and then it'll push that information into these fields. The feedback release date, that is a Turnitin field. And if you're going to use Turnitin to deliver feedback to your students, then you will want to change that date to reflect when you want the feedback to be released. So you might decide, I want the feedback to be released immediately, and you could set the date as the start date, which is today. Or you could say, no, what I really want is for the feedback not to be released until about 2 weeks after I have it due, because I want all the kids to get the feedback when I've had time to grade the papers. So it's really just kind of up to the instructor as to what is the time frame that they would like to see that feedback released to their students. I'm going to show you Feedback Studio toward the end of the webinar. So most people, when they are working with Turnitin and Canvas, they ultimately have to look at Canvas SpeedGrader and look at Turnitin, which is going to be called Feedback Studio, and decide which of the two they want to use to deliver feedback to their students on the student assignments. And there are different reasons why you would choose each one. So you just kind of evaluate them. You can't use both of them. You really do have to choose one or the other. So allow submissions of any file type. This field is controlling the types of files you're going to allow the students to upload. Turnitin's purpose, most people purchase Turnitin because they want to check for plagiarism. So Turnitin divides files into two types, those that can be checked for plagiarism and those that cannot be checked. And we call it be checked for similarity. That's how we'll term it at Turnitin. Files that can be checked for similarity are going to be your PDFs and Word docs and PowerPoints, Excel, anything with a readable text, highlightable readable text. Files that cannot be checked for originality are your PNG files and your other image files like JPEGs. So if I check yes here, allow submission of any file type, what I'm basically saying is any file type Turnitin will accept, let the students load it in. That includes image files which cannot be checked for originality. If I say no, that means I'm limiting the students to only be able to upload files that contain highlightable readable text and can be checked for originality. So questions about the difference between yes and no for that particular selection?
No, that's good that we're able to limit the type of file that the student is able to submit. So therefore, there won't be any issues about the student saying, I was able to submit it.
Right.
It let me upload it.
It let me upload it.
Yeah.
But we do have professors that use Turnitin for feedback. They don't use it for similarity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So because they like the feedback tools. So that's why we have to let kids upload image files.
Okay.
As a math teacher, I would have had the kids upload image files. So there is a reason why we have that option for them. Okay. I'm going to click optional settings here. The optional settings are Turnitin settings. So you're kind of figuring out how you're going to let the kids, your students rather, what you're going to allow them to do. Are you going to allow them to submit past the due date? So that's a simple yes or no. When they submit, what types of sources do you want Turnitin to compare their paper to? Do you want Turnitin to compare their papers to Turnitin's student paper repository? We've been collecting papers now for well over 10 years. So there's over 70 million papers that are in that database that you're going to be comparing against. If you start submitting papers to Turnitin's repository, then next semester, all of your new students will be compared to last year's students. So if kids are passing papers around, you're going to start catching some of that as you put papers into the repository.
Now, that never happens.
And that never happened. And I didn't. I did not ever do anything like that when I was in school. Thank you. We're all very realistic in this.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to compare against over 70 billion websites, archived and current. We're going to compare against journals, periodicals, and publications, even those found like in EBSCOhost and some other places. And when you see the originality report, it's going to break down the matches based on those three categories. You can pick any combination of these. So you could say, oh, I just want to compare those two. But if you want an originality report, you have to have at least one of these selected. The third option here is, when do you want an originality report to be generated? Would you rather the report be generated immediately, or would you rather for all of the students to turn in their papers and then we're going to generate the report on the due date? But I will tell you this, if you select generate reports immediately, then when the student submits the paper, about 2 minutes at the most later, they're going to get back their similarity index, which is the score, the percentage score. And then Turnitin also is going to turn around and on the due date, they're going to generate the reports again for that entire class. So the reason for this is when you generate reports immediately, students get their scores. When you generate on the due date, Turnitin's able to compare all of the papers within the same class to each other. So immediately, what it actually means is generate the reports immediately and then also generate the reports on the due date. Generate reports on due date just means generate reports on due date. So questions about generating the reports, about the timing.
No, to allow the student to get the feedback to say, okay, my paper is scoring high in terms of plagiarism. That allows the student to see where, they could possibly go back and make the corrections before they actually submit it for a grade. So I do like the fact that they're able to get that information and know, hey, wow, this is popping up as an alert.
That second option is the most popular because most of the professors I talk to want to use Turnitin as a learning tool.
Yes.
And if that's your goal, then you generate the report immediately and then you allow students to resubmit. Because then they can make the corrections and then resubmit the paper. Just be advised that when they resubmit, it's going to overwrite the original submission. So you're not going to get both submissions, just whatever the latest one is. Also, when the students resubmit, the first time they submit their paper, it takes 1 to 2 minutes to get back the originality score. But once they start resubmitting, it's going to take up to 24 hours to get the second score back. And the reason for that is Turnitin is running a service in the background that is removing their first submission and replacing it with their second submission so that the two are not compared against each other. So it takes a while for that service to run.
Now, I did not know that.
I
That's
usually
good.
tell the students, and I tell the professors, tell your students, because if they're students, to me, if I had been a student, I would have been tempted to say, I get back that report score and, oh, it's way too high. Well, to start making little changes, submit it again, see if that took care of it. Then, oh, no, it didn't take care of it. Make some more little changes. And you can't do it that way. They've got to take that paper, make all of their changes, and resubmit, and then they're going to have to wait to get the score. I think it's actually good for the students to have to wait. So, but you have to know that up front that that's what's going to happen. Otherwise, it might catch them off guard. So questions about that functionality?
No, great information.
So see where it says allow late submissions? Allow late submissions, first time submissions only. Once students start resubmitting, the resubmissions are only allowed into the due date. And once the due date hits, there's no more resubmissions of the assignment. At that point, the only way a student can resubmit is if the professor deletes their original submission and opens up the door for them to resubmit, which is an option and can be done. Okay, so questions about the first three fields?
No questions.
Awesome. So exclusions, you have three different types of exclusions that you can do in Turnitin. You can make those exclusions here. And if you do so, the exclusions will be for all papers submitted for this assignment. Or you can make these exclusions one by one on individual papers after the report's generated. So I'm going to exclude the bibliography, but not exclude quoted materials and small matches. And when we get to the report, I'll show you how to do these and what they look like and how they impact the score. And usually that helps people to understand what they're doing, what that exclusion part means.
Why would you exclude the well, I guess you would, the bibliography.
Yeah, the bibliography is probably the most popular exclusion.
Yeah, with the book and yes, okay.
But then with quoted materials, you kind of have to weigh your options a little bit. And with small matches, you have to weigh your options even more. Like I know computer science people, small matches, sometimes they'll use that because with that particular discipline, you do get a lot of small matches. Like there's only so many ways that you can say things that are technical. So student papers for the more technical disciplines always come back at higher percentages than your English papers are going to come back because of just the nature of the discipline. So you kind of have to weigh your options and think about it a little bit, how you want to handle it. I don't know about business though, with what you're teaching, if you have some of those same technical things that happen with the computer science and the engineering type of classes. Are you going to allow the students to view the originality reports? If you're using it as a learning tool, then you would probably say yes here. This next field, submissions to this assignment will be stored in. You have two choices. You can either store student papers in our paper repository, which is the more popular option, because again, as students submit papers this semester and you put them into the paper repository, that means that next semester, all of your students' papers are going to be compared against the papers that were submitted this semester. However, there are times when you do not want to store the papers. For example, let's say that you have an assignment that's in two parts. You have a first draft and you have a final draft. If you put the first draft in the repository, that means that the final draft, when the students submit that, it's going to come back as an almost 100% match to the first draft. So you have to think, do I really want to store the first draft in the repository and have that happen? Or would I rather just store the final draft? Because if you don't store the first draft, that means the final draft will come back with the originality report that's more realistic. I also tell professors that you do not want to store papers that you are intending to publish somewhere in the paper repository. So if you have, especially, and this happens probably more in the social sciences, where you get up to your junior or senior year, you might have kids that are writing papers and you intend to try to get them published. If that's the case, don't put them in the repository, because the publishers are using Turnitin to test. And then that paper comes back as 100% match because it was in our repository. And the other papers not to put in the repository are like me. I'm testing. I don't store anything in the repository while I test. So your thoughts on storing papers in the repository? Any questions on that?
No, no questions. No questions.
Okay. I'm going to associate a rubric to this assignment so that you can see it, how it works. And then if you want to use rubrics, I've got some pretty good documentation I can share with you on how to build rubrics and Turnitin. So all I did was I put in this argument rubric into the system. If you decide to use Turnitin with its rubrics, you can launch the rubric manager here. And this is where you go to create new rubrics or grading forms. A rubric is just the matrix style rubric like this one. A grading form, those are pretty neat. Those you have just basically criteria, and then you can enter a certain number of points for each criteria. So I like grading forms. As a math teacher, I would have been tempted to have used the grading form. Then once you put rubrics in, they're listed here, you can import and export rubrics, which is one of the best ways to get rubrics into the system. It's a little tedious to get the rubrics in, but once you've got them in, they're very easy to use. So let me leave that as 11th and 12th grade argument. These fields right here are ETS E-Rater technology. ETS is the Educational Testing Service. That's the organization that puts out the ACT tests that students take to come before they come into college. E-Rater is an automated grammar, spelling, usage mechanics, and style checker. So what it's going to do is it's going to evaluate the paper and go ahead and put comments into the paper. And then students will be able to see those comments when they open up Feedback Studio. I'm going to select yes here. And go ahead and set up ETS for you so that you can decide if it's something you want to use. If you decide you don't like it, but you're wanting to use Feedback Studio, then you can just select no here and ETS goes away, and then you don't use it at all. So it's just an option. Once you've decided on the basic settings that you're probably going to use most of the time, you can save those settings as a default. And then that way you don't have to come back in here and set them all up again. You just know to use your default settings. And then once you're pretty clear, this is what I want, you would hit submit. So look back over these and see if you have questions going through here. We've got the grades, the dates, all of these different fields. Is there anything you want to talk about before I hit submit?
Well, I wanted to ask you about the ETS E-Rater technology. Do you have an example of what that looks like?
I'm going to show it to you when we go into
Okay, great. Okay, I'm sorry. And then the other question is about the rubric.
Yes.
I know we talked about PARC classes having the rubrics, but can we upload or attach a rubric to an assignment from PARC this way?
You will not be able to upload them in the form that they're in.
Okay.
You would do, what I would recommend that you do, and again, I've got some documentation on it, but if you go into import, like you're importing, there's a template here, which is an Excel template. And you can copy and paste it into the Excel spreadsheet and then upload the spreadsheet. That's probably the easiest way to convert it to a format that Turnitin can utilize.
Okay, I'll just wait until the spring.
Well, you might change your mind once you see how it grades it, because I really love the way that Turnitin uses rubrics. So, but you can tell me. It's all up to what you want. So I'm going to hit submit. Okay, and save my settings. Now, one more thing to show you about this. So right now I'm on the settings tab. See where it says help desk here? If you're ever having trouble with Turnitin and you want to submit a support form to Turnitin, then you can hit that help desk link and it opens up the support form. And it will automatically populate your user information and your class ID. If you're having a specific problem with a specific paper, if you'll put the paper ID in this field, it really helps our support people to get things handled pretty quickly. So again, what I did was I was here and I just hit help desk. Now, what I recommend that you do before you submit the support form here is actually talk to Jared first, because it might be that Jared can solve your problem. And if he can solve your problem, you're probably going to, that would be better. Plus, it makes him aware that there's a problem out there. But then if he can't solve your problem, hit that help desk and submit the problem to Turnitin. But that's what I would do if I were in the instructor's shoes. So questions about the help desk tab?
No questions.
Okay. And then the assignment inbox, this is where your student names are going to populate as students start submitting for the assignment. That being said, I'm going to pop out and I'm going to log in as a student. And I'm trying to remember what, oh, there it is, page, that's the one. So Jared set me up as a student, and I'm going to go into my account, and there's my assignment that I just created. Now, when the students come in, I usually tell them, go to the summary tab, and on the summary tab is all that information about their assignment, including their rubric. So if you're using a Turnitin rubric, they can click the link, they can see the rubric so that they know what the grading criteria is. Also on that summary tab, it will tell them whether you're allowing resubmissions, if you're allowing late submissions, or if they're allowed to view their originality reports. That's where that information is for them. But they're probably going to come in here and not look at any of that, because that's, you know, kids, they just want to submit. So they're going to come in, they're going to hit upload submission. And this is what they see. They can give this a title. They do not have to. It's helpful if they do, but it's not required. Oh, before I do that, let me copy that. They can do a file upload, which is this tab, but they can also do a cut and paste submission on this tab. So they could just put their name in, put the name of the paper in the submission title and then paste their text in here. But I tell my students, although Turnitin will let them type in that field, I do not recommend it. There's no save feature here. So if they get knocked out of the system for any reason, power goes out, whatever, then they lose anything that they've typed in here. So I tell them not to type into that field. They can also do a cloud submission from Google Drive, Dropbox, or OneDrive. I'm going to just do a file upload. So I'm going to select the file to upload. They can also drag and drop into that box here. Turnitin is going to say, hey, please review, make sure that you're submitting something correctly. And then Turnitin is going to give them a preview window, ask them again to review, because we want to make sure that they don't put something into our repository that they don't want there, so they can review. They can click here to review the text. And when they're sure that it's the right submission, then they hit accept submission and save, and the submission is complete. And then it loads into the inbox. Right here under the percentage sign, that's where their similarity score is going to go. If you're using Turnitin to grade the paper, this is where their grade will ultimately show up. Their grade will also push through to the Canvas gradebook, so it'll go in there. So that's all automated. If they need to resubmit, they just click that button, they can resubmit. This button here will allow them to download their original file. This button is their digital receipt, so they can generate the digital receipt so that they can take a look at it, and then they can store it if they want to keep a copy of their submission. So I'll show you what it looks like. So there's a digital receipt that they can download. I have some professors that tell them download it and keep it as proof of their submission. And if they click either on the paper title here, or once the similarity percentage loads, or the grade, then they're going to open up Turnitin's Feedback Studio, which is where you, the professor, can go in and add comments and look at their similarity score. This is those E-Rater comments. The E-Rater comments come in automatically. See, they're the ones in purple. So here's an example of one. For that particular first statement in the paper, E-Rater identified that they have used a passive voice. And so they tell them, hey, you may want to revise it. The student can jump out to the handbook and can view the handbook. Whatever you've defaulted as the handbook is here, but they can change that and look at a simpler handbook if they'd like to. So this is E-Rater. It's not a huge functionality, but it is, I have a lot of professors that really like it. So you have to kind of evaluate it for yourself and see if you like it. Right here, whenever you pop out to another window, see how this first window was my assignment. This is the handbook. Earlier, I'd opened up the support form. I had at one point in time opened up SpeedGrader. They're all opening on different tabs. But where I was on Feedback Studio. Feedback Studio will often open up on a pop-up window. If that ever happens to you that you can't find it, go back to your browser icon, which for me on a Mac is, I've got it over on the left. Most people have them down here at the bottom of their screen. Go back over to it. Feedback Studio will be one of the windows, and you can pop back open the Feedback Studio. So I show that to people because it's very easy to lose it and then not know how to get it back again. So questions about ETS or about what happens if you lose that pop-up window anywhere, how do you find it back again?
No, no questions. I am loving the Feedback Studio as well as the ETS.
I like it. I do find sometimes that the comments are not as relevant, but I think it's also a chance for us to teach the students how to figure out if the comments are good. You know, and that's an evaluation. That's a high level of thinking on Bloom's taxonomy. Is evaluating whether it's good feedback or whether it's not good feedback.
Yeah.
Let me show you the instructor view of Feedback Studio. And so I'm going to pop out of here and go back to, now remember I had logged in as the student. So now I'm going to log out as my student and I'm going to log back in as my professor. So now I'm going back to my instructor role. So here I am in the instructor role, and the assignment that we were doing, let me close that little window. The assignment we were doing was this third one here. So I got this paper from my niece, who was a freshman when she wrote it. And so she scored 6%, so she did really well. So this is what the instructor is going to see. Unless they've loaded this in a new tab. If they hit that checkbox, load in a new tab, it would be on a different browser window. But right now it's sitting inside of Canvas. So the instructor sees the author and the paper title, the date, timestamp of when it was uploaded. Once the student has gone into Feedback Studio and viewed feedback, so we didn't have any feedback for them to view, so it hasn't changed colors, this will turn to green. If you grade it, the grade will be here. This is the similarity score, which is color-coded. The colors change at 25%. So from 0 to 24%, it's going to be green. 0% is actually blue, but I don't know that I've ever seen a blue score. 1 to 24% is green. And then when you hit 25%, the color is yellow. So from 25% to 49% is yellow, 50% to 74% is orange, and 75% to 100% is red. So you can quickly look at a group of papers and kind of spot based on the color the ones that are not green. Those are going to be the ones you're going to want to take a look at. Over here under options, you have uploading a paper, downloading a paper, or deleting a paper. So that little option right there, delete, if you ever have a student who needs to resubmit after the due date, this is how you come in, delete their original submission, and then that opens up the door for them to resubmit past the due date. Just be advised, if you do that and you are using Turnitin to deliver feedback, if you delete the assignment, you're deleting the feedback also. So just be careful doing that. You can print the feedback off, print it as a report though, if you have to do it after you've given them feedback, and I would recommend that. Speaking of printing, you can check this box right here. And let's say you had 30 students in the class, you could select any number of students, and then you can download the original files of those students. the original files converted to PDF format, or you can download all of your comments and your quick marks that you associated to those. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like when we go into Feedback Studio. These download as zip files for multiple students. If you want to just download for the entire class, you just go to Download All. You can get a spreadsheet with all the grades that you did. You can get a spreadsheet of everybody that's submitted, and then you can download the original files, standard PDFs, and grade marks for all of your students at the same time. Another thing to know about this inbox is if I start typing the names of the students, the student is going to filter. You're going to start filtering the inbox. So if you have a class of 200 and you quickly need to find somebody in the class, just start typing their name and it'll start filtering through the students until it gets down to that student's name. So you'll want to use that probably. One other thing that this inbox, the inbox is right now not showing the paper ID because of my Zoom level. So let me show you that if I do this, see how I made the zoom go down, and now I can see that paper ID for that paper. If you ever have to submit a support ticket to Turnitin is going to want that paper ID. That's the quickest way to get it, is by just taking your zoom and zooming out a little bit. Okay, so questions about that?
No questions, good information.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into Feedback Studio. I'm just going to hit the similarity percentage here and open up Feedback Studio, and I'll show you kind of how it works. Oh, sorry about that. I'm in the wrong view. So this is Feedback Studio. Now, Feedback Studio, most people purchase Turnitin because of the similarity. So I'll run through that with you really quick. So for the similarity report, oh, by the way, at the top, you've got the student name and the paper names. You can't hardly see it because my email's still on. This is where you can put a grade. These arrows, if I have more than one student in the class, I can go from student to student, just like you can in SpeedGrader. So that's what those arrows do. On the right-hand side, I have 3 layers. This is the grade mark layer. This is the similarity layer. And then down here, you have ETS. The similarity layer, if you click on the header, like the top layer, see how I turned it blue? That's what turns the layer on and off, like that. So let's say that I was looking at this and there's a match right here. It's color-coded and so highlighted, and then there's a 1 there. If I turn the similarity layer off like that, then the matches go away. So I'm turning them on and off. If I click this, the number, this tells me my major matches. If I click on a match, the paper automatically goes to where that match occurs, and it highlights the text and matches it by color coding it. Right here, you have a full source text button, which if I click it, will open up the full source in this window. And another thing that I can do, if I'm on that little pop-up, is if I click this link, it's going to open up the source in a full-time way. So it's going to take me to the specific website. So let me take us back to Feedback Studio. So again, it's just when I click on one. So if I click on a publication, see it's going to navigate. Oh, there it goes. Same thing, I've got full source view right here. I can link out by hitting this. This one comes from EBSCOhost. So then I'd have to have a login though to get into EBSCOhost. But the student paper one, I want to make sure I show you that one. Again, it's going to navigate in the paper to the match. But student papers are because of intellectual property rights, we can't show you those. So if you try to link out to them, what you actually get is this, which is your way of submitting a request to view the paper. So basically what would happen is, I think this one was from the University of Iowa. So if you hit that button to send a request, it's going to send an email to the University of Iowa and to that instructor, or to somebody at the university, whoever they've designated. And then that person, then you and that person would have an email conversation about your request to see the paper. All Turnitin does is send the email. So let me pop back here. Okay, so this that I'm dealing with is called the match overview. You can drill down into the matches, see all the underlying matches, because every time Turnitin hits a match, it's probably matching at a number of different sites along the internet, just because of the nature of the internet. Okay, so first button on the similarity layer. First button on the similarity layer is the match overview. The second one is all sources. It's just going to list all of the sources for me. The third button is where you can filter. So remember how when I did this assignment, I did exclude bibliography as a filter. So right now it's excluding the bibliography from the source matching. So what that means for me is, if you go down to the bibliography is not a match. So let me show you what would happen then. I keep hitting my keypad at the same time and it doesn't like me. So see how I'm at 6% right here? Well, if I go into my bibliography and I change that and I say don't exclude the bibliography and apply that change, watch my 6. Now, there it goes. Now I'm up to 8%. And that's what matched in the bibliography. So by excluding the bibliography, I basically excluded 25% of the matching. So does that kind of make sense how the exclusions are going to work?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So here I'm at 8%. See all these 1% matches in here? If I wanted to exclude those, I can exclude sources that are less than. And if I were to put a 2 right here and apply that change, now every source that's less than 2 is going to be excluded. So now my 2% match is still in there, but now all the 1% are gone. And that's because I excluded all of those that are less than 2. So you can play around with the exclusions and see how they work and decide if you want to use exclusions as you're dealing with similarity. So questions about the similarity index or the originality report?
No questions. I've utilized Turnitin previously.
Oh, so you know this?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. See, shouldn't have to tell you that one. So, okay. So now for these, did you use quick marks when you used Turnitin?
I don't think it existed then.
Okay,
it may have, or maybe I just didn't know how to use it, but no.
Okay, so when I was
it's been a while.
Yeah, I taught mathematics. I taught high school geometry, like 10th graders.
Okay.
And probably for 6 months out of the year, I would tell them to use a straight edge until I finally taught them. It took me that long to teach them. But if I had Turnitin, I would have, this is how I would have done it. So I would have come here to the Quick Mark Manager, and I would have created a set for myself. So see how I have this set? I've created that for myself. So create new set. So now then what I could do is, I've used this before, I need to go clean out my sets. Now what I can do is, if I add a comment, I can say, hey, students, I would like for you to please use a straight edge. Because that was my favorite thing I said all year. Then I could convert that to a quick mark. And if I were grading electronically, I could save that. Now that quick mark is in my set. I can now use it on any student paper for any assignment that I do going forward. Even if you guys were to change integrations and go to Blackboard, that quick mark would still be available to me through everything. But what makes it even better with quick marks, they're organized into sets. So let's say I chose commonly used here, and I pulled awkward here onto the paper, because I can do that because that was already there. This is my rubric that I'm using. If I were to take that quick mark and associate it to the rubric, let's say I associate it to this criteria on the rubric, and I can add my own comment, if I want to. Now that quick mark is associated to that comment on the rubric. I could take, like right here, I'm going to drag across to no, and I'm going to add the quick mark to delete, like that. And then I can assign that maybe to this part of the rubric. And now that is on the rubric. What I like about this is then when I go to score the paper, which I can score the paper either by using these sliders, and as I slide down here at the bottom, the text of the rubric appears here. Or if I don't like the sliders, I can expand the rubric in a new field. And I can just kind of tap in here to grade. So I pick that and I apply it to the grade. But as I'm grading, I can look, and I should have done that. So I should, come back in here. Let's look at my comment real quick. Maybe I'll change maybe I changed my mind. I think based on that comment, I'm going to score them here. Apply that to the grade, close it. Now my grade calculates, it pushes it here, and then that pushes it to the grade book in Canvas. So I just graded that paper using Turnitin. So that, if I can say why people choose Turnitin, it's because of the relationship between the quick marks and the rubrics.
Okay, I am amazed. That is a phenomenal tool.
And then you can also strike through, and you can add your own inline text comments like that if you want to. I did give Jared a video on Quick Mark Manager, and I gave him some documentation on how to use it. Another thing that you can do is you can add voice comments. Like you can say, oh, your writing is improving over the course of the semester. Stop that. You can say, oh, your writing is improving over the course of the semester. You just have to train your students to come in here and look at it. Just if you use voice comments, don't forget to save. Because if you don't hit save, they don't save. You can write text comments to them. One thing I recommend to instructors if you're using quick marks is to create for yourself an office hours quick mark, like here, so that you can drag your office hours on there, like maybe to the top of the paper, and you can tell them to come see you during these hours, stuff like that. So you can be creative with it. But once you finish and you've got all your comments and everything, make sure that the layers are turned on, like here. And there's a report called a current view report that you can download. So everything that you've put together for the students goes into the report. You can tell them to print the report, take it to the writing center or writing lab, although you guys probably have a lot of online students, so that may not be as easy. But they can print it and take it to a tutor if they have a tutor or somebody that's helping them. But here's the report. So it gives them the title page. There's the submission information. Then it's going to give them the paper with the comments on it. And then as they go down through here, then it's going to give them their similarity percentages, their score with your comments, and then all of your comments if they've been associated to a rubric. And then it's going to give them the rubric with your score points on it. So they have access to that. So, and then I have to remember to get back to Feedback Studio. Go here. Okay, so your thoughts.
Well, again, I have not used Turnitin for several years.
Okay.
I don't know how long ago or when the quick marks became available. Has that been a tool that's always been available with Turnitin, or is it a new feature?
I don't know how long it's been available. I know it's been available for quite some time, but it may have come after you stopped.
Okay.
So, but it's definitely, if I were the teacher, I would have used quick marks with rubrics and the association of the two. Yes. To me, if you just have one or you just have the other, they don't work. But the association here, boy, that could be really helpful for students because, and I think for me as a teacher, it would have cut down on some of the, why did you give me the grade that you gave me type of things? Because my comments are associated to the grade that I gave you on the rubric, sort of.
Yes, and you have a variety of methods to give feedback.
Right.
Not only do you have the quick marks, you have the audio, as well as the ability to type in text. And I think it would just allow the instructor, number one, the variety of methods, but also increase the likelihood of the instructor giving the amount of feedback necessary too. Because if you're
Yes.
grading 30 papers,
The
sometimes,
quick marks do make it possible to
yes,
add feedback to 30 papers that
yes.
you might not do otherwise. So that is very, very true. And then when you go back to Canvas, the grade, I need to probably refresh it, but the grade pops in, and that makes it easier. And then the fact that it pushes through to the grade book really helps. So then you're not having to manually enter that. It just goes in. And that is my time. So I did an hour. That was a
Well, it was definitely informative because I did not know that Turnitin had all of those features. I'm trying to add it to the courses that I'm developing. I was just adding it as a plagiarism checker. I did not know it had all that functionality, which is going to be even greater in the spring when it's all interconnected.
Yeah, the only thing about the plagiarism checker is that if you use that, you won't be able to use Feedback Studio. So to use Feedback Studio, you'll have to do an external tool. But
Until the spring, right?
Well, when the plagiarism checker comes in, this is how I think it's going to go. People that want to use Canvas Speed Grader and use that functionality are going to do the plagiarism checker. That's what they're going to do. People that want to use Feedback Studio are going to use the external tool.
Oh, okay.
And that's going to be what you have to watch. Your option is going to be, which tool do I want to use to grade? And then you'll have to make that decision. And for some assignments, you may choose one, and for others, you may choose another. I don't know that it's just that you have to always do one or always do the other. It may depend. But we can talk more about that in the spring. So I'll make sure and get with Jared and make sure that we coordinate some way to deliver that information to you when it comes available.
Well, this was very informative beyond even what I expected it to be. And what a great presentation.
Well, I'm glad that you got something out of it, because
I got a lot out of it.
Come out at night and do this, and we're going to record it so anybody can have access to it.
Yes. I highly recommend this presentation to all the instructors.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So I think we're good. So Jared, you got any final parting thoughts before we?
I do not. I appreciate your time, Paige, and it was great having you here the last couple sessions here this week. And Melba, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll do some more in the spring.
Yes, looking forward to it. Have a good night.
Nice to meet you. Good night.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks,
have a good night. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Jared.